This conference will now be recorded.
And we'll call to order the January 20th, 2021 Board of Ed Liaison Committee meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. This is Bill O'Brien, 9th District Councilman and Chairman of this committee. And first of all, happy and especially a most healthy 2021 to everybody. I have a motion for approval of the minutes for the meeting of November 18th, 2020.
This is Laura Dancho. Motion to approve.
Chris Pia.
Thanks. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thanks. Passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, it's Chris Pia.
Yes, Chris.
I'll sit out now as a vote as Councilman Perillo just logged on, if that's okay, for the record.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Welcome aboard, Bill.
How you doing, Bill?
Okay, who's up to bat? Chief Operating Officer's report.
I guess that's
Thanks,
me.
Pam.
Good evening. Hi. Good evening, everyone. We will update you on fiscal year 21 budget, and we are really closely monitoring all areas of the budget. We continue to trend significantly higher than budgeted for special education costs. And we're also concerned about unemployment costs. We believe we'll have insufficient funds in that area as well. There are a couple of areas, however, that we do anticipate some savings, and that, of course, will be transportation due to the distance learning days, as well as substitute teachers, because unfortunately we are struggling to secure a lot of the substitute teachers that we need, including building subs, and we do have a few open certified positions remaining at this time as well. So overall, there's still quite a few variables that could affect the budget over the next few months, but we are hoping to tighten our year-end projection by early spring. And the other item that we just wanted to share with all of you is that obviously for the past 6-8 weeks, we have been working diligently on our fiscal year 22 budget that the superintendent will present to the Board of Education on January 28th. I will tell you that while we haven't exactly finalized all our numbers yet, we did start off with close to a 7% increase. And that was basically requests from the schools for new initiatives, as well as our contractual obligations with those alone are over 5%. So we are working really hard to have a more fiscally responsible presentation to the board, but it has been a struggle. And that's about where we're at the moment.
Mr. Chairman, through you, Chris Pia. Bill?
Okay, go ahead, Chris. Sorry, I was on mute.
No problem. Hi, Pam. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, doing well. Just a quick question. You mentioned unemployment costs. What are those associated to?
The unemployment costs primarily are just due to a lot of people from last spring. What ends up happening is that even if they've left our employ, and that includes certified teachers that may have left us, substitute tutors, because of the way the quarters are counted, we still absorb some of the costs for those collecting unemployment. And as a result, we have had significantly higher unemployment costs and a lot more people appearing on our invoices. The CARES Act did provide a 50% reduction to our costs, but that ended in December. So if the costs continue, and they were anywhere from $25,000 to $35,000 a month, and just to put in perspective, our entire appropriation in the budget was $60,000. So obviously, if we don't see a reduction, and if we don't continue to get some offset, it could very well end up in a deficit in that budget area.
Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate it.
Okay.
So Pam, this is Laura Dancho through the chair, please. You mentioned substitute teachers. Did you say that that was a savings or an added deficit?
We anticipate a savings in the substitute line item, primarily due to the fact that we're struggling to get substitute teachers.
Hey, Pam, this is Bill. I would guess too, you're having pretty good savings on the buses for athletics, since there hasn't been any athletics up till now.
Absolutely, transportation overall, and that includes field trips. But I should remind the group that the board had reduced the budget in those areas for the current fiscal year as a savings in realizing that the pandemic wasn't going away anytime soon. So while we are definitely recognizing the savings, it's probably not as much as you would have anticipated. The distance learning days for regular transportation is definitely impactful. And I think with sports, I'm still kind of being conservative because I do think we may have a few more meets than we expected, hopefully through the spring season.
And Pam, what's the status of the coaches' contracts for the winter? Have they all been signed and taken care of already?
I will refer to that to Janet.
Okay. All right, we'll wait till we get to Janet's report.
Okay.
Any other questions for Pam?
I have just one final question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Can you tell me through the chair if the budget freeze is still in operation, or if you've eliminated that?
The spending freeze is still in place. We are allowing the purchases of the supplies that we truly need, but we're being very cautious, as I explained previously, until we know how that non-lapsing appropriation will ultimately be provided. We've had to just kind of hold that line. So we're monitoring it weekly. I just, as a matter of fact, today approved a supply order for art because I know they really needed it and they've been holding off. So we're trying. We're trying to make certain that everyone has their basic needs within the schools as far as supplies, but also watching that budget very carefully with freeze for the temporary freeze.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, Laura, I want to go ahead, since we're talking about budgets and money, you want to go ahead and ask the question about the search?
Sure. The consulting firm, I'm wondering if someone can give me what that consulting firm is costing for those
Sure, I'm sure Allison may be able to give us a better idea. I believe it's around 25,000 because I haven't yet seen the signed contract for it.
I signed it, and I believe Janet did too. Maybe last month. It was. I want to say 19. Does that sound right, Janet? But I'd have to go back and look. I mean, I don't have a copy of it. It was, brought here and then.
It was about then, yeah.
Was that the entire search process, or is that just is that like in a phase?
That's everything.
For the whole year, because they're going to serve the board for a year. So you're saying 19,000 for 1 year of services. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Pam. If there's nothing else, I guess we'll go on to Janet.
Thank you. Nice to see you all and Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Give you just four items that bring you up to date. As you may be aware, our students have been on remote learning for the 2 weeks following the holidays. And so now they returned to school yesterday on the hybrid model. K1 and English language learners have resumed their 4 days a week schedule, which they had already started before they went out before Christmas. Our return plan, keeping our fingers crossed, calls for grades 2 through 4 beginning 4 days a week next Monday, and grades 5 through 8 beginning 4 days a week the following week. Our likelihood of being able to get off the hybrid for the high school students is pretty slim. So that will probably continue on a hybrid for a while. Secondly, we're looking carefully at students who are failing classes and looking to strategies for remediation. We know we need more tutoring and intense summer school at all grade levels. If we receive any additional COVID funds, which we do believe will come, we plan to use them for remediation and social and emotional support. Third item I have is we have applications in the state, and Laura, I'm sure you're familiar with this, for reimbursement for solar panels for Bunnell, Stratford High School. I believe Johnson's being considered. New roofs are planned for Chapel, Second Hill Lane, and Worcester. That will complete all school roofs. I just want to leave my reminder with the council that the new roof replacement cycle may take a rest now for a while after these roofs are done. But remember that the cycle needs to resume again 20 years. That you cannot put a new roof on less than 20 years, but after 20 years, they need to be examined and start the cycle again. I think the town, I applaud the town for the job they've done, especially since Laura has been involved in this, to making sure that this cycle gets taken care of. So kudos to all of you who've worked so hard for this. You're usually interested in residency. So my latest residency report indicate.
You're muted.
Just bounced into mute. I'll start again. So my report on the residency, for all cases, we had cumulative cases of 28 that had to be investigated. 4 of those just involved an address change that was still within Stratford. 28 were investigated. They were all concluded in satisfactorily. And 3 of them have either moved out. We moved them out. The third one, 2 of them have already moved out. The third one is in the process of being moved out. Just so you're aware, as you know, we've had the tip line in for a couple of years now. We still are not receiving any calls on the tip line. So that's where we stand right now in residency. Thank you very much.
Okay, I guess, Janet, you heard the question about the coaches' contracts for the winter?
Oh, yes, I forgot to deal with that. Yes, we released them just this week. They were prepared, but were not released until we got the recommendations on which of these sports would go forward. Only the moderate risk sports will be going fully forward, and they must wear masks at all times. And dance, cheer, so forth may do some warm up and practice, but they may not compete. And the only sport that doesn't wear a mask 100% of the time is swimming. So there'll be limited sports, no tournaments, and limited spectators. The spectators will be limited to just 2 parents. Each participant would have 2 spectators that may come into the games, and they have to be separated and they have to wear masks.
Have practices started yet?
Yes, this week.
Okay, thanks. Anybody have any questions? One thing, Jen, I want to ask about, and I guess this would include Pam, but I understand that the cost of summer school is almost cost prohibitive for some students. And in the long run, if they don't do summer school, it means they, I guess, probably have to do an extra year or extra classes. So in the long run, would it be cheaper to somehow make summer school free? Or do we have scholarships for those that can't afford it?
Summer school has been a break-even proposition. It doesn't necessarily break even, but it has to come close to that. We haven't been able to fully fund summer school for those students who fail classes. We do run it for special ed, But for those students who have failed classes, we have not been able to subsidize that. So what the students have to do is they have to retake that class.
During the regular school year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we get the funds, we've already had discussions about what we would be doing in terms of an intensive summer school this year, because we're going to have a large number of students who are going to need remediation at all levels.
To speak to that, I know in Trumbull we have more kids failing this year than we've had ever. Like and we don't have summer school in Trumbull anymore because of the same reason because the cost was too high. So I know at some point, right, Janet, were Trumbull kids coming to Stratford's program? Is that still happening?
Yes. Yes, they have been. They've been paying a tuition to come.
Also, if you don't mind, I forgot to ask, and I think this is more for Pam, forgot to ask about the food service deficit. What's the status of that, and how did it get so big?
A really good question. I will tell you, I've been spending a lot of quality time with our friends from Sodexo. I did a little research and I plan to report this to the board Monday evening at their meeting, but we've had a deficit at least the past 8 years. And if you look at the town audits, it's reflective of that. Some of it definitely increased when the federal Hungry Healthy Kids Act came up, and that was nationwide. I mean, I was with another district at the time and we went through the same thing. But most recently, I think our community eligibility provision program added to it, which provided for no-cost meals to all of our students at 6 of our schools. So we're reassessing that. We're under a different federal program this year, so we really aren't wrestling with that issue, but we have a further deficit being added due to the pandemic. And that too, I mean, I've dealt with my colleagues throughout the state, and even those districts that have had very successful food service programs earning money are seeing a deficit. So we are doing a lot more marketing with the food service program. There's a new Facebook page up and running. I spoke to them about trying to communicate to our families the fact that meals are free for every student or every child in Stratford, 18 and under. And I was a little bit frustrated myself because I couldn't understand why we couldn't give food away. So I think we were doing a better job communicating to our families that you don't only have to be a family in need. The meals are available to everyone. And as Dr. Robinson mentioned, as we bring more students back, of course, our participation hopefully will increase and we'll have more opportunity to do more meals. But I really don't have a definite answer prior to my arrival as to why there has been a deficit, but we are working with Sodexo to try to pay it down and to minimize and mitigate the current issues with it as well. So I will say stay tuned.
Thanks. And I know you said that in their contract will expire in June and it'll go out for bid, but is there much competition out there? Are there a number of other companies that might bid?
There are a few, and I think that we are trying to work with Sodexo as a partner right now to make certain that they can do all they can. They have reduced our fees within the last week and a half. So they are recognizing the issues that we're facing and doing their best to work with us.
And it's my experience that they've done a very good job.
I have gotten that feeling, and I will say that working with both the food service director that is on the premise as well as her supervisor, who I actually worked with in another district, they have been very attentive over the last few months, and I'm not shy about telling them what our needs are. So it's been a good partnership and they've been good to work with. So I do appreciate it.
Thanks. Anybody have anything else before we go on to the next agenda item?
I just have one quick question and this would be for Pam as well.
Sure.
I just wanted to follow up with you on the 2 grants that the district received for COVID relief, and the remaining balance in the CRF one at our last meeting. And I'm just wondering if you spent it down or have some sort of an accounting for that grant and all the expenses associated with it.
Sure. We are working to provide the board with their most recent accounting that will be provided in their packets for next week, and we'll be happy to share that with you. I will tell you that we struggled the same as many other districts with trying to secure some contracted services that we had anticipated utilizing the Coronavirus Relief Fund grant for. So while we did our absolute best to spend all of the money that was appropriated to us, I can't guarantee at this point that we have. I know for a fact that special education had contracted for social worker, psychologists, and more than one just through the period to December 30th, as we were allowed to, and we weren't able to secure all those positions. In addition, we had additional COVID cleaning, and the cleaning company was never able to fill all of the custodial slots that we had requested and we had funded for. I share that with you because we are limited in how we can transfer funds from what I call one bucket of money to another through the state grant. I think we've done a really good job, and not only do I think say that because we utilize the funds, but I think we utilize them wisely. We were able to really take care of a lot of the issues that we were faced with that money. And as Dr. Robinson said, we are awaiting, we got an email last week from the state that we should be hearing any day now what the second round of funding will be. And we've been talking already for the past month or so on how ideas to utilize those funds that will best benefit our students. And the second ESSER fund, I believe, Laura, is what you're asking about, the second grant. We have been working on a revision to that, which I reported the last time. And the main reason we haven't actually submitted it is there's no deadline as far as the submission. We have quite a bit of time yet to spend those funds. But we want to see how the second grant will come about so we can make the best decisions on how to revise the existing one and how best to use the new one.
Okay, great. I'll be looking forward to seeing that report when you send it out.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right, thank you, Janet and Pam. As far as the Stratford High renovation project, I don't think we have anybody from that committee doing it. Is anybody here on that committee? Well, Janet, you are, right?
Yes, I am.
Well, one thing I noticed.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I noticed the other day, I'm glad to see the fence has been repaired that was hit by a car over on King Street. That's good. And well, how about the heating problem at Stratford High? Has that been resolved yet?
I think things are, I think most things have been resolved. It's moving along. They're doing punch list items. There's a lot of discussion at the last meeting regarding the field and concerns about whether the layout of the field followed all the specifications. So a lot of time was spent on that. Things are moving along very nicely on the rest of the project, and the wonderful child development program, the playground in the back is put in, and it's just wonderful. So very exciting.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions or comments about the Stratford High? All right, thank you. The carryover fund. I know we talked about that last month, I think, right? Anything new?
Yeah, well, can you help us with that? We're wondering where that where that stands in terms of when we might receive notices to the council's approval.
Laura Dancer, you want to touch on that?
Sure, I can take that. So back in December, the town council passed a resolution which would allow the Board of Ed to create the non-lapsing funds account. So it's going to eventually morph into an ordinance, and this is new to our town, so we want to make sure that we do it right. So the resolution was done in an effort to allow the board to begin, accessing funding, and then hopefully as a result lift the spending freeze. The issue, I believe, is that before the funds can be released, the audit needs to be complete. So I believe that that's what the holdup is right now.
Thanks, Laura.
So when the audit is complete, which I believe should be shortly, right? The end of January, I believe, is when that should be completed. The process for requesting the funds will be in accordance with the state statute. And you would just do a written request to the finance director. And then the way the funds can be spent is dictated by the town council, and that's going to be clearly spelled out in the ordinance. So it would be for non-recurring expenses and not used at all to like supplement a budget for general operating. And
Does that help?
that from what we had discussed, that would suit your needs at this time. So feel free to comment on that.
Have any
Is that
comments
helpful,
you'd like
Janet?
to make? Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. I will say that I've been following it. I did see that it was approved through the town council, and I understood from Dawn and Chris, they kind of gave me a while ago what the next steps would be, and I know it has to go through an ordinance committee to get approved. I think the only thing that concerns me a little bit was the fact that there could be no appropriation made until the after the third quarter of the fiscal year, which brings us to April. And I believe that normally by state statute, you have to have your town audit done by December 31st. You can request an extension, which I believe the town may have done, which is fine. I mean, it's perfectly permissible. So that may be what's going to delay it a little bit. We do understand the steps that you need to take and the language that was in the actual resolution. It's just that this year we had hoped to maybe be aware of an appropriation a little bit sooner than that, because as Laura, you've mentioned, we do want to get that spending freeze off. I'm a little
Right. So the resolution should have taken that initial action. It should have made you able to do the initial action. So the audit process is very time consuming right now. There's a lot that they're doing, and the delays I think had a lot to do with special ed accounting, and I think that we just need to get the audit done, and then we're going to be able to create this non-lapsing account for the Board of Ed to use. And there's a lot of other things that we're trying to work out within the ordinance, but we certainly didn't want to hold up anything with our educational expenses at this time. And I believe that the completion of the audit is a step that the town council wasn't aware of when we first talked about it in December. So that's where it stands right now. And I believe because of that, our hands are tied.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you very much.
I mean, it is moving forward, and
Thanks, Laura.
we can certainly speak with Don and see what the date for the audit will be.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, do anybody have any old, new, or other business? I hear an from Laura.
Sorry, I'm not.
Well, I just wanted to talk a little bit about diversity, and several of us were in the focus group before this meeting, and we talked about the diverse population that we have, and the topic of more diversity in the classroom with teachers. And as Chris Pia will affirm, I'm the old man in the council and the old man in this group, but it got me thinking about when I was in elementary school, there was no such thing as a male teacher in my school. Of course, that was a Catholic school. It was mostly nuns and a couple lay teachers, but you've seen it change over the years where now there's many more men teaching, and just like nursing used to be just about all women, now you see many more men that are nurses. But I think, and I hope we'll keep pushing to get more diversity in our staff, but I'm optimistic that with our new vice president, it's going to motivate a lot of young people to get into education. So that's just a comment I wanted to make.
Bill, may I just respond?
Sure, of course.
We have a very, very active, enthusiastic, gung-ho minority teacher recruiting group. They are doing wonderful work in terms of helping us recruit and also grow our own. So we grow our own in a couple of respects. We are working with students, some of our very bright students who aspire to be teachers, and they're being mentored, and we are looking forward to helping them get into the education field. For some time now, for about 4 years, I have had the access to recommend minority teachers, candidates to Southern Connecticut State University. They do have a fund that they will use for minority candidates. We just haven't had any. So we're working toward that. So if we can help mentor our students through high school and they have the opportunity to apply for this scholarship at Southern Connecticut State University. The other thing that we're doing is we are working to bring, we have about 11 paraprofessionals, CIAs, who are interested in becoming teachers. They already have AA degrees. And so we're working to help them find ways, a program that they can become certified to be teachers. So there's a lot of things working right now, and we'll begin to see, these are things that take time to see the results, but I think we've seen some pretty positive results just in our hiring this past year.
Now, Janet, the group that you mentioned, is that made up of staff and community members?
Yes, and they're really very gung-ho. It's led by one of our HR people, Yvonne Temple, and she's comes to us from Sacred Heart with a lot of really creative ideas.
Thank you. Good to hear.
So Bill, before we sign off, I just want to go back to a budget issue again. And
sure.
I know I'm sorry about always talking about this, but I know that the board is probably going through with your finance committee, creating the budget request for this next coming fiscal year. And I hope that as you go through this process, that you take into consideration the fact that for the past couple of years now, the Board of Education did end up with a surplus. And that's why this non-lapsing fund is being created, because you're able to, and that you take all of these things into consideration and come to the town council and the mayor with a reasonable request, and don't look at huge percentage increases, and let's not end up what we ended up doing last year with the Board of Ed and having to cut and all that stuff. To try to keep it reasonable and come to us with a respectable, usable budget request.
I can assure you that's what we're working towards. As I started off saying, we were over 7% and we are working that down. And I think it's important to note that our contractual obligations are over 5%. Last year, they were well over 4%. And obviously they had to pare it down at 2.58% increase. So we totally understand. And we also understand all the constraints placed on municipalities throughout the country right now during the pandemic. So we're being very, very aware of that, and we're trying to do the best job we can in presenting it to the board. And of course, the board will have their work
Right. I mean,
out
we're
for
aware
them as well.
the contractual obligations, and
Sure.
we understand that that's like a huge percentage of your budget request. So we always take that into consideration, but it's we need to resolve the special ed, we need to resolve Sodexo, like all those things are things that
Agreed.
need to be addressed, and hopefully we can really work collaboratively. I have braces. I'm sorry. Can you tell I have braces? I can't speak.
No.
Yeah. Anyway, that's
I
it.
went through that too.
But absolutely, we look forward to it. I look forward to working with the board and sharing information with the town.
Good.
General Rhodey, you had something?
Just something that actually Dr. Robinson and I have discussed many times. And one of the things with special ed is the burden of proof. And we have a wonderful special education program in the town of Stratford. And to have to send people out of district is where our huge expenses come in. Everything from transportation to, the actual working with the students, and in some cases is even more than that. And if Dr. Robinson wants to delve into that, I welcome you to do that. But what we really need to do is to try and get the state statute changed for burden of proof. It shouldn't be on the town, it should be on the families to prove that we don't have what they need, because in many cases we do. And we shouldn't have to pay to send them out of our district if we have it in district and it's an excellent program. So burden of proof should be shifted over to the families to prove that we don't have it. And I have met with tremendous resistance when I have talked to state legislators about it. Their comments were, oh, it's political suicide and blah, 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 and stuff. And they're not willing to take that on. And I'm not saying we should deny anybody any kind of education. What I'm saying is that if we can provide it in-house for a lesser expense, we should absolutely be allowed to do that without having to spend an exorbitant amount of money in legal fees. So anyway, any help that you all can give us with helping to get that legislation from the state changed with people that that are in the state legislature, it would be extremely helpful to not just Stratford, but every community in the state. It would be helpful to, and it would also keep the students closer to home. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
You're welcome.
Well, if there's nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Karen, so moved.
Karen, thanks. Have a second?
I'll second it.
Go ahead, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks for a short but efficient meeting. Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah.